tool through welfare benefits. John Kenneth Galbraith has established that $20 billion a year would affect a guaranteed income, which he described as not much more than what we spend in the next fiscal year to rescue freedom and democracy and religious liberty, as those are defined by experts in Vietnam. The contemporary tendency in our society is to base our distribution on scarcity, which has vanished, and to compress our abundance in the overfed mouths of the middle and upper classes until they gag with superfluity. If democracy is to have breadth of meaning, it is necessary to justice and equity. It is not only moral, but it is also intelligent. We are wasting and degrading human life by clinging to archaic thinking. Thank you.
Okay, we got one more. Brother, you want to introduce yourself because we're running out of time. Go ahead. You good? Okay. Stay here.
Hello, my name is Darren Felton. I am a proud member of the Piscataway Chapter 1 New Jersey Order. Today I will be reading an excerpt from the speech, I See the Promised Land, given by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on April 3rd, 1968, a day before his assassination. This happened to be the last speech of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s career. Now I will present my speech. Let us rise up tonight with a greater readiness. Let us stand with a greater determination. And let us move on in these powerful days. These days of challenge to make America what it ought to be. We have an opportunity to make America a better nation. And I want to thank God once more for allowing me to be here with you. You know, several years ago, I was in New York City autographing the first book that I had written. And while I was sitting there, autographing books, a demented black woman came up. The only question I heard from her was, "Are you Martin Luther King?" And I was looking down writing, and I said yes. And the next minute, I felt something beating on my chest. Before I knew it, I had been stabbed by this demented woman. I was rushed to Harlem Hospital. It was a dark Saturday afternoon, and that blade had gone through, and the x-rays revealed that the tip of the blade was on the edge of my aorta, the main artery. And once that's punctured, you drown in your own blood. That's the end of you. It came out in the New York Times the next morning that if I had sneezed, I would have died. Well, about 4 days later, they allowed me, after the operation, after my chest had been opened and the blade had been taken out, to move around in a wheelchair in the hospital. They allowed me to read some of the mail that came in. And from all over the states and the world, kind letters came in. I read a few, but one of them I will never forget. I have received one from the president and the vice president. I've forgotten what those telegrams said. I received a visit and a letter from the governor of New York, but I've forgotten what the letter said. But there was another letter that came in from a little girl, a young girl who was a student at the White Plains High School. And I looked at that letter, and I will never forget it. It says simply, "Dear Dr. King, I am a 9th grade student at White Plains High." She said, "While it should not matter, I would like to mention that I am a white girl. I read in the paper of your misfortune and of your suffering. and I read that if you had sneezed, you would have died. And I'm simply writing to say to you that I am so happy you didn't sneeze. And I want to say tonight, I want to say that I am happy I didn't sneeze. Because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960 when students all over the South started sitting in at lunch counters. And I knew that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream and taking the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around in 1962 when Negroes in Albany, Georgia decided to straighten their backs up. And whenever men and women straighten their backs up, they are going somewhere. Because a man can't ride your back unless it's bent. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1962 when the black people of Birmingham, Alabama aroused the conscience of this nation and brought into being the Civil Rights Bill. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance later that year in August to try to tell America about a dream that I had. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been down in Selma, Alabama to see the great movement there. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been in Memphis to see a community rally those brothers and sisters who are suffering. I'm so happy that I didn't sneeze. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. And I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to live to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Thank you.
Close us out, young lad.
This is Town Talker. Good night. God bless you.
All right, you know what? I forgot. Next week, we still have one more week.
Do we? I thought it...
Friday is the 1st. Friday. So, bring them back.
Did Linda call you?
Yeah, she called me. Yeah. So bring them two back. And see, I didn't know your speeches were so long.
Yeah.
So the idea is that I will, you know, that's why I talk, because I didn't want to run out of town like last week. So next week, come back. And we'll close it out next week.
Presented next week.
Yeah, that's good. Both of them.